And we are live. So let's start with the intro music. Welcome all to B Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host Derek, and this is my co-host and brother Marcel. Today we'll be previewing, of course, Week 2 live to talk about what we think will happen in each matchup and see what we think about each game and players. How you doing, Mars?
I'm good, thanks. I'm just excited to be on. It's been a while since we've been on the mic together, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had a rough start of the season to actually try to actually do any real videos just because we're both really busy. But now things are ready to go for the season, starting in week 2 for us, I guess. We can quickly go over Thursday night's game. The score was 39 to 29 for Washington. It was a heck of a game. I don't know what's all these island games being so good this year so far. 3 for 3. It's a good sign of this season. Anything of note in that game, Merce?
I just thought Daniel Jones looked better than people are giving him credit for, especially against that tough defense, and still acclimated to his new wide receiver group. He still doesn't have Evan Ingram. He's learning to play with Saquon Barkley again, so there's a lot of things there. And to lose by only 1 point to Washington, even though they only had Taylor Heineke, I thought Washington played a pretty good game as well. So I thought both teams outproduced or exceeded expectations for sure. So no, that I thought that game was a lot of fun, a lot more fun than obviously we all expected. It was a really good game. Saquon obviously still not great, but right now both the running backs in that game to me are buy lows. Like Antonio Gibson hasn't really topped 10 points yet this season. Barkley hasn't topped 10 fantasy points this season. Um, Both really because they haven't gotten in the end zone. So I think this is a buy low opportunity for both those players, as I still view them as top 14, top maybe pushing top 12 running backs in fantasy football. So yeah, I'm just thinking take advantage of that buy low window while it's still there. How about you?
Yeah, no, for sure. I did. It was a problem that they lost Nick Gates, there, the O lineman there from the broken leg in the game, and they lost him for, of course, the season. So I think that did definitely hurt Giants' chances of winning that game. Once I saw that happen, I was thinking it was in the books, but they had a pretty good chance. I think it was when it was who was it, Gibson that had fumbled the ball, or something happened towards the end there. I forget who it was, but the Giants had a pretty good chance of coming back and winning, but. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see once they get Evan Ingram back as well. But that O line is getting quite beat up in the Giants. But hopefully, Shane Lemieux. Oh no, yeah, he's a guard. Yeah, yes. Hopefully he'll come back as well, and a few other people, and maybe Kenny Galladay can start to perform like he used to back in Detroit. When it comes on Washington, I think it was quite a good surprise to see Taylor Heineke do what he did. Really, when you look from him to and Ryan Fitzpatrick, like they're kind of a null in my opinion. Like there's not much of a difference really. It was good to see that he loves to hyper target Terry McLaurin. That's good for anyone who has that shares. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with the rest of the season with these two teams. I'm still not sure whether either of them are good or if they're both kind of bad or if they're just both meh. But it was good to see a nice close game all the way through. So do you want to start into the Sunday slate?
Let's do it.
Okay, so starting at the 2 o'clock slate, Eastern or 1 o'clock Eastern time. Sorry, 2 o'clock for our time. We have the Las Vegas Raiders, Mars, your team, at the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's a spread of -5.5 for the Pittsburgh Steelers and an over under of 48. This implies 21 to 27 for the Steelers. Just of note that the Raiders did play a Monday night game and it went into overtime. So those players are probably quite exhausted. They did lose, of course, Josh Jacobs, so take him out of your lineup. He's out for week 2. They did lose left guard Richie Incognito this week as well, so keep that in mind. He also missed week 1, and Yannick Ngakwe, I can't say his name properly, but he is questionable for week 2. So we'll see there. On the Steelers side, we have a couple questionable players, but no one out for sure. So, what do you think of these two teams, Merce?
I think it's going to be a pretty good game. The only thing I want to warn people on is Darren Waller. He's like the top tight end when it comes to DFS play. He's the most expensive one just because Travis Kelce being in the 9 o'clock game or the late game today, he doesn't he's not in DFS. So I wouldn't be paying up for Darren Waller just because it's been proven over and over again that the Pittsburgh Steelers are very good at shutting down tight ends. Yeah, obviously, if you drafted him in your redrafts or in Dynasty and all that stuff, you have to play him just because it's Darren Waller and he's going to have the target share and he's still going to produce. I just don't think he's worth the price when we're talking DFS. They say Kenyon or Peyton Barber is going to be the lead running back. I don't want to touch him at all. It doesn't matter how desperate you are for a running back. Pittsburgh's defense is phenomenal against the run, and Peyton Barber, I just don't think that is that good and won't have the workload, even though they suggest he will. I think Kenyon Drake's going to come in, have 10 carries, 5, 6 targets, where Peyton Barber's probably going to be maxed out at 10, if not 11 carries, and I don't expect him to do too much with it. We saw Derek Carr have a very poor first half, but then kind of started turning it on against the Ravens. If he can come out firing like that, he's going to have a really good game, and it should make a good game for both Brian Edwards and Henry Ruggs, and who knows, maybe Hunter Renfrow. But other than that, I'm not relying on any Raiders players other than potentially Derek Carr if you're in a 2 QB league. And then obviously, like I mentioned about Waller. When it comes to the Steelers, um, Ben Roethlisberger, I think I have him as a top 16 QB this week. Let me just give it a peek. So I have him QB 13 this week. So I guess I'm playing Ben Roethlisberger. Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Juju. To me, they're all in play, and I would rank them as I said: Deontay first, Chase second, Juju third. I'm not playing either of the tight ends on this team, and Najee Harris, you have to play him given his workload, and I think he can have a good game. And I think this might be the game that'll start kind of his career because last week was a little bit of an underperformance. So I think this game can get his career started on the right foot for an NFL career. How about you?
Yeah, well, when looking at this, I mean, the Ravens ran pretty well against the Raiders, so I do think that that does give Najee a chance to, like you said, start his career off. And I'm looking at this game, I'm thinking it's probably going to go under. I mean, 48, that, 21-27 is kind of what you're looking at for each player. And I can see that not hitting the over just because Steelers' defense is pretty good. The Raiders are coming from basically a 5-quarter game, and they just played on Monday night. And it's not like I think the Steelers can put up a lot of points. I mean, it's not like they have a terrible team, and but the Raiders defense looked a little bit better than they did previous years. And Big Ben said himself in an interview, he had said that the defense is going to be winning games for them, which that's not a really good sign if your quarterback says that. It kind of makes you be like, I feel like the quarterback should have a little more faith in himself. So maybe he's starting to feel his age a little more. We kind of start to see that as he plays. Um, Other than that, I mean, any wide receiver go ahead as a flex, but I don't love them. Deontay is probably my favorite of the three. And when it comes on the Raiders side, I don't mind Brian Edwards as a flex, but I wouldn't want him anymore than that. And same thing with Kenyon Drake. I know Peyton Barber was said to carry the load, but I think if anything, it's any of the pass catching will be what happens most, and I think Kenyon Drake has that a little more on lock than anyone else. Hunter Renfrow, I could see getting quite a few targets too, just because if you're right about Darren Waller being quite locked up by the Steelers defense, then Renfrow might see a few more throws coming his way. And I wouldn't mind playing the Steelers defense either. I think it would be a place I can get to Derek Carr quite a few times and make him make mistakes. Now
Cool.
looking, are you good for that game?
Yeah.
Okay.
Other than I think the Steelers win, but when we're picking the line of 5.5, I think Raiders could cover. I think this is going to come down to maybe a field goal win or a pretty tight. Like I don't expect Pittsburgh to blow out the Raiders, so I'd rather bet on the money line here than I would on the spread. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I just don't think there's gonna be enough points scored to make a 6 point difference. Like, it's not that I don't think the Steelers are gonna probably pretty easily win this. I just don't think the Raiders are like. It's not like the Steelers are gonna be 20 points ahead of them. I think they're gonna stay within like six, just because they're not gonna be scoring much either side. Looking at the next game, we have San Francisco 49ers at the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a spread of 3.5 for the 49ers, and it's an over-under of 50. So that's an implied point total of 27 to 23 for the 49ers. So last week, of course, we saw Raheem Mostert go out with a leg injury, and he's out for the season. Um, and we have Sermon that was a healthy scratch, so he will be coming back in this game. He is active. So we'll have to see what happens there. I'm kind of curious to see the workload. I think that maybe he can work himself over the next few weeks into having a bigger workload. But I do think that Elijah Mitchell will get the most carries out of any of the three running backs. But it is his job to lose at this point, I think, and it's pretty easy to do because Sermon is a higher drafted pick. We can see maybe him try to get a few more chances and even bypass Mitchell. But Mitchell does what Kyle Shanahan likes, which is straight line speed and just running full force north and south. Um, Brandon Ayuk had a pretty bad game last week, but we can maybe expect him to bounce back a little bit. I think he kind of has to work himself into getting more touches, but I think they just had Detroit under such lockdown most of the time that they weren't really worried about you pushing Ayuk because they know he's coming back from that injury from last year. So, looking at the Eagles side, we have Rodney McLeod, safety, out for week 2. He also missed week 1, so it's not like it changes anything from what we saw from week 1. Jalen Hurts played well against the Falcons, and I mean, you see, it was a 32-6. So it'll be curious to see what they can do against the 49ers, what we could probably think is a better team compared to the Falcons, which didn't really surprise me, but I'm not sure if it surprised you, came out and just flopped against the Eagles last week. I'd be curious to see what all the wide receivers can do, especially with Devontae Smith and Jalen Reagor. Running backs, I'm not sure how much I love them in this game, just because it is the 49ers, and they're pretty good at locking up their running game. Goddard might see a few more targets, but other than that, I'm not really sure if there's I really want to see this game because I think it's going to be a very interesting thing to see. Okay, both teams, what do we expect from them for the rest of the year? I think it's a good data point this week. What do you think, Bryce?
Yeah, I would have to agree that I think this game will be more telling about the Eagles than last week. Like you said, my top ranked RB for the Eagles is Miles Sanders at running back 23, which isn't like the nicest spot to be, and that's very I think that's very subject to change, especially with the way Kenneth Gainwell kind of established himself last week, which was nice. And then Devontae Smith obviously had a very good week last week, was definitely kind of Jalen Hurts' first look. Obviously, Hurts is in play across all formats. DFS, he's still cheap enough that I would like to take a swing at him just for the Russian floor and then whatever he can do for upside through the air. Dallas Goedert did establish himself, and I thought he was the tight end one, clear cut. But then Zach Ertz is still going to steal some targets and some work, and who knows, he could also steal a touchdown from Dallas Goedert. So I don't love Dallas Goedert, but if you're pretty desperate for tight end, then that's a player I would like to play just through volume. On the other side of the ball, kind of like you touched, who knows about Jimmy G and Trey Lance and what's going to happen in this game. Elijah Mitchell, I agree, it's his job to lose. Deebo Samuel, while healthy, I'm all in. I've always been all in on him. It's just he has to stay healthy and on the field. And yeah, George Kittle, I think George Kittle is my number 2 tight end on the week behind Travis Kelce and ahead of Darren Waller this week, which I did not have him in the top 2 last week. So I do expect him to kind of turn things around. Yeah, and that's about all I have here, other than I do expect San Fran to cover and beat the line of 3.5.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think they can cover as well. I think the Eagles can make it pretty close, but I really want to see what the Eagles can do because I really think the Falcons might be just a complete crapshoot. So it'd be curious to see. I mean, maybe Matt Ryan's arm fell off, but we'll talk about that later when the time comes. But it'd be great to see what the Eagles can do. I mean, the Lions did a pretty good job, but it was mainly just in garbage time. They were just trying to catch up constantly. And I think the 49ers were kind of just like, oh, they're not going to catch up. Oh, they caught up a little bit. Okay, let's try again. And I think they kept just doing that. They kept just stopped trying for a while. over the game because you could see the 49ers had that the whole game. Moving
Yeah.
on to the next game, we have the Houston Texans at the Cleveland Browns. They have a huge spread of 12.5 for the Browns. The over-under is only 48.5, so that would mean about a 18 to 30 implied implied point total for the Browns. Texans surprised us, of course, by beating the Jaguars quite easily. It was 37-21, and it didn't look like they were ready to lose any part of that game. Um, so yeah, Tyrod Taylor. I mean, he can be a QB2 at the very least, especially if he gets a little bit of running. But I would be a little more worried about him this week against the Browns. I don't think it's going to be the same competition at all. I think they're going to have a lot harder time. Even the running backs, I think, are going to have much harder time. Mark Ingram would be the only one I'd want to start, and even then, it's as a low end RB2 at best, probably a flex option. Brandon Cooks, I don't mind as a flex option at wide receiver. When it comes to tight ends, I don't really want to touch either one just because we don't know. I really don't think there's going to be a lot of points scored on the Texans side. When it comes to the Browns, they did have Anthony Walker go on IR, the linebacker. And they also have Chris Hubbard, their own lineman, go out for week 2 as well. So we'll have to see what happens there. Comes to Baker Mayfield, middling QB2, maybe high end QB2, but I wouldn't have him in my top 12. But he's still not a terrible pick. Odell Beckham is still out for another week, so keep that in mind. Put him on your IR spot and pick up someone else, even if you pick up just anyone, just in case something happens. Other than that, I do like the Browns defense in this game, and if you are pretty jammed for tight end, I don't mind playing Austin Hooper, just to try to see what happens there. But David Njoku, I think, also had a pretty good game last week, so keep that in mind. When it comes to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, you're playing him no matter what. Kareem Hunt, I don't mind as an RB2 or flex, and Jarvis Landry, same thing with him, wide receiver 3 flex option. What do you see, Mars, in this game?
Yeah, no, definitely all good points. I'm not touching Mark Ingram if I'm going to be honest in this game. I have him down at running back 34, even behind guys like James Conner, Devin Singletary, and those kind of guys. I will the only Houston Texan I'll play is like you mentioned, Brandon Cooks. I have him at wide receiver 27, and that I don't even believe in if I'm going to be honest. Like you said, uh, I wouldn't even be surprised if Houston doesn't score a touchdown this game. Like it might be 1 to 3 field goals, and I don't even expect them to top 10 points. So that's where I'm at on the Houston side of the ball. Because I don't even think Tyrod Taylor was that good last week. When you look at the gameplay, when you look at stats, sure, he got by. But when you look at gameplay, like, he wasn't that good. It was just like Jacksonville's defense was worse. And I've been tossing and turning on the Cleveland side of the ball when it comes to the players. When I think about it, it's um, do the Browns just go up 14-21 nothing in the first quarter and a half? And then they say, well, this could be a game we can make our wide receivers happy because we do want to lean on the run. Let's just throw the ball, make our receivers happy. That could happen just to kind of do that side. But then I also think, well, maybe they might just say, let's just run the ball every single time and just drain out the clock, keep our good players healthy. Maybe Nick Chubb doesn't play in the fourth quarter. Maybe they give the ball to Kareem Hunt or even Dernis Johnson in the fourth quarter. Because I really, really expect this to be a blowout. I think the defense is going to demolish Houston, and then the offense will have good field position, and then on top of that, way better weapons and a better offense than what we saw from Jacksonville last week. So, like I said, I don't know what to expect from point totals. Obviously, if Houston can keep this game kind of close, then Nick Chubb has legit running back number 1 on the week upside. But then, like, if they say, let's just see what Baker can do since we're comfortable with the lead, let's get the ball to our young guys like Anthony Shorts, Donovan People-Jones, and those guys, it's just like maybe Baker has a game, and then maybe we see David Njoku, Harrison Bryant have more reps since the game might be out of hand early, and just to develop those guys and keep those guys happy moving forward into the season and keeping them engaged. So there's a lot of different angles you can think about for the Browns. So I do have Baker at my quarterback 16 just because of the upside in this game. Like we could see him throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in 3 quarters, and I wouldn't be surprised just because his defense is so bad. And then Cleveland has some burners on the outside. So it'll be an interesting game for sure. But like I said, I'm playing Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Jarvis for sure. Baker, high end QB2, middle end QB2. And if you want kind of a DFS flex cheap play, Anthony Schwartz, just hoping for a long bomb touchdown.
Yeah, because he's kind of, in my opinion, the replacement to Odell Beckham right now at this time. I think that's why he's useful right now, and I kind of have to agree. Like the main thing about the Browns is their run game, but maybe they'll let them not have to run so much just because they're like, hey, we're already winning this. Let's just make Baker, go through from throws and through reads, and basically like comes a practice round once they're already up. Now maybe we're wrong and they don't get that big jump up, but I would be surprised by that. But I think that's why the running backs are a pretty safe play because I think they're going
Yeah.
to get their points whether the game is close or if they're already winning. If they're winning by too much, either they're going to run out the clock or they already scored their points at the start and now they're trying to use their wide receivers to practice up Mayfield. That's a good suggestion that might happen when it comes to Baker. Looking at the next game, we have the Denver Broncos at the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a 6.5 in favor of the Broncos, and it's a 45.5 over under. That's implied point total of 26 to 20 for the Broncos. So clearly, Vegas thinks they're going to win. And I don't disagree because what we saw Jaguars do last week was pretty horrid, to be honest. I do worry about that the coach, Urban Meyer, to see if he can, make things a little more interesting. I mean, to be fair, he did lose Travis Etienne before the season started, so maybe he had quite a few plans for him, but he does have to adjust if he's going to continue to be an NFL coach. I mean, he has Chenault, which can do a lot of what Etienne can do, so he would be the only wide receiver. Him and Chark would be my most interesting wide receivers to play this week, but I don't really trust any of them, to be honest, because I think the Broncos can tie them up and just keep them from doing almost anything on offense. That's why I love the Denver Broncos defense this week. Lawrence, I would not want to play if I have to. He's a rookie, plus he's in our tough matchup. James Robinson, Carlos Hyde. I mean, it was a mess to see what happened last week. Carlos Hyde getting most of the touches. So I wouldn't almost really want to play any of the Jaguars players unless I'm very desperate. When it comes to the Broncos side, I think Teddy Bridgewater is a decent play. I think he's a low-end QB1. I think he's definitely startable. When it comes to the running backs, Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, I think they're both worth playing. I think that they can both score quite a bit of points because the Texans ran great against the Jaguars last week. And I think that these two running backs are even better than anything the Texans had. So I think they could just run all over them. Just a reminder that Jerry Jeudy's out for the next 4 to 6 weeks because he did suffer a high ankle sprain. Cornerback Ronald Darby is also got put on IR after week 1, so keep that in mind. Other than that, that's the biggest injuries. So yeah, I think Tim Patrick could maybe get quite a few touches, and same thing with KJ Hamler. But I think, of course, Sutton is your main wide receiver you're going to want to play. I have him probably as a low-end wide receiver 2, maybe a middling wide receiver 2, just because I think he can get quite a few touches. When it comes to tight ends, I honestly don't mind either Fant or Okwuegbunam. I think you can have him as a low-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2. I think Fant would be the better one, of course. I think he would hopefully get more touches now that Jerry Jeudy's out. But I'd be curious to see how they both perform. What's your thoughts on this game, Mars?
Yeah, I'm kind of saying that Denver is gonna manhandle Jacksonville. I expect them to win by 10 plus. In terms of fantasy outlook, I think both Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams will have the same amount of touches. Just who's going to outperform the other is the question. I like being one of those people who are quite direct and not cop myself out. So when I have to decide between Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler, I've had this question probably 4 times this week. At first I was like, you know what, it's Tim Patrick. That's who the guy was last year. But then I've completely changed my mind, and I'm all in on KJ Hamler being the Jerry Jeudy replacement. This is the coaching staff that drafted KJ Hamler. He's more of a slot type receiver, and Jerry Jeudy played a high percentage of his snaps out of the slot in week one before he went out. So I think naturally KJ Hamler fills that role better. I do expect them to kind of split the shares of like 2 and 3 wide receiver sets, but I do give the edge to KJ Hamler. I believe Noah Fant is a smash hit tight end this week. I have him all the way up in my rankings to tight end 4, which might be surprising to some, but that's what I expect out of him this week. Teddy Bridgewater plays or locks onto his best weapons, and if Cortland Sutton's not open, the next look is going to be Noah Fant. So I'm all in on Noah Fant. And I was low on Noah Fant to start the season, but with Jerry Jeudy going out, you're talking about 10 targets a game potentially to be shared elsewhere. On the other side of the ball, yeah, you did mention that Travis Etienne was out for the year, but I don't think I can give credit to or any kind of excuse to Urban Meyer about that, just because he was out 3 weeks ago. So he's had plenty of time to adjust for that. I just think Urban Meyer right now is horrible, which is horrible, which is not really a nice thing to say, but he did a horrible job in that game. Every play call was backwards. They were very, very predictable from an offensive standpoint. But then when we're talking about the weapons, DJ Chark, everyone's drooling over his 12 targets. Yes, that's great. But we're talking 12 targets against Houston. Houston was horrible, and he could only reel in 3 of them. His stat line looked better because he came down with a touchdown and some yardage. But if I'm Trevor Lawrence, I'm thinking, why am I going to target this guy 12 times? He's only going to catch 3 when Laviska Shenault went out and caught 8 for 9. Like, I'm going to give the ball to the playmakers, the people who can catch the ball and keep drives alive. And that wasn't DJ Chark. Yeah, he had the target volume to say he was the wide receiver 1. But when I'm thinking fantasy football implications, I think Laviska Shenault is the higher floor, but yes, lower ceiling wide receiver here, where your guys like Marvin Jones, like he did nothing till the fourth quarter. So when I look at that, his stat line looked okay, but he just wasn't the guy his stat line kind of showed to finish that game. So I kind of have Laviska as the wide receiver 1 in terms of fantasy output, and then DJ Chark and Marvin Jones is kind of a toss-up. You can play either as a flex, and I'm more than okay with that. James Robinson and Carlos Hyde. James Robinson played double the snaps of Carlos Hyde, so I'm not too worried about James Robinson naturally. It's just the play calls were kind of weird. Giving the ball to Carlos Hyde, we know he has a history with Urban Meyer, so maybe Urban Meyer had a little more trust in him. But all we've seen is great things from James Robinson in the preseason, so I expect James Robinson to start turning around. Maybe not this week, just because Denver is a very good defense, and we saw that last week. But going forward, I think James Robinson, again, he might be another one of those buy lows with Antonio Gibson and Saquon Barkley. And then, yeah, talking about the quarterbacks in this game, Trevor Lawrence, I'm kind of shying away until he proves us that he can take care of the ball and make plays, especially when we're talking a good defense like Denver. And then Teddy Bridgewater, I have him in as my quarterback 15 on the week. So, and then he's in the same tier as my top or like my 12th quarterback. So we're talking about he has wide receiver or quarterback 1 upside this week, just because he has that safe floor with adding a little bit of rushing yards, and then he also has the targets. He has a weak defense that he's playing against, so he can also bring some upside there too. So I'm more than comfortable playing Teddy this week.
Yeah, I think Denver Broncos are going to take this pretty easily. I think they could even probably cover the number. The only thing that would concern me is the couple injuries they have on their defense. But other than that, I think they're going to cover that 6.5 point spread. Yeah, when I have to agree when it comes to the Fant, I do think he'll do pretty good, but it does scare me because Okuwebunam's no pushover either. So I'm wondering if he will start to see more targets and more snaps as well, and maybe give Fant a little, because Fant is coming back from an injury if I remember correctly. So he might be a little slow to start still this week as well. But you're right, with Jared Judy out, he might get a lot more targets than we see. Or maybe he'll go to KJ Hamler and Tim Patrick. We'll have to see how this all goes. They had a pretty good matchup last week against the Chargers, or not the Chargers, the Giants. So I would be curious to see what they can do against this defense that let Houston just run all over them and score 37 points. And that's what makes me believe the Jags are just going to be a terrible team all season. I have no faith in Urban Meyer either. That's what kind of worries me for this entire crew. I think they all have pretty low floors. I think, like you said, Chanel probably has the best out of anyone to have a decent floor. When it comes to James Robinson, Carlos Hyde, I mean, what a mess. I don't know why he's playing Carlos Hyde as much as he is. He might see something I don't, but I'd be very surprised. James O'Shaughnessy, the tight end for Jags, I wouldn't love to play him in this game. He's probably a tight end 2 at best. But if you're really desperate and that's the only tight end you have, go ahead and play him. But I don't love this matchup for him. Maybe future games. But he might see a lot of targets. We'll have to wait and see. Give me 1 second. So now looking at looking at now the Saints, the New Orleans Saints at the Carolina Panthers. There's a 3.5 spread difference for the Saints, and it's a 44 over under, meaning that the implied point total is 24 to 20 for the Saints. And I could see this going in the over, but only if the Saints score the points, because I don't have much faith when it comes to the Panthers with the QB. I don't know if Sam Darnold is good or not yet. I mean, they only scored 19 points against the Jets, and I don't know. I don't think the Jets are a very good team right now. Do keep in mind that 7 coaches have tested positive and are out this week for the Saints. So keep that in mind. It's the O-line coach and a few other wide receiver coach and a few others. But yeah, so that's a little concerning. And what else happened this week? The center Eric McCoy is also out for week 2. And also backup linebackers of Pete Werner and Jace Hansen are out as well. And Lattimore is also questionable for week 2. Probably might not play. He just did have stump surgery this week, so we'll be curious to see what happens there. And defensive end Marcus Davenport also was placed on IR after week 1, and linebacker Quan Alexander. So they actually suffered quite a few injuries and COVID tests over from week 1 to week 2. So be curious to see how much this changes their team. I mean, they did just shellac the Packers 38-3, but I'd be curious to see if they can keep up this momentum. It was nice to see James Winston play as he did. He didn't have to throw a lot. He just had to throw efficiently with Sean Payton backing him up. When it comes to the wide receivers, I don't really want to play any of them with trust. But, of course, you're starting Alvin Kamara, so there's no doubt there. Tony Jones is always a good backup to have on your team, but I wouldn't want to play him. Looking at the Panthers side, they did lose cornerback Miles Hartfield after week 1, so he's on IR. Other than that, I mean, you're playing Christian McCaffrey, no question there. Chuba Hubbard's always nice to have as a backup, but most people aren't going to bother owning him yet, just because you never even know if he's the direct backup. You never know with Royce Freeman there as well. When it comes to the wide receivers, DJ Moore, I do like to play. Robbie Anderson, he scares me. Honestly, I think it would have been a good idea to maybe trade him this week, just because he didn't really get many targets, but he did get a long bomb for a touchdown. So that, I think, in my opinion, that was a good time to trade him, just because if the person didn't look at the actual game and just looked at the stat line at the end, he didn't look so bad. But looking at it again does worry me. Terrace Marshall played a nice game as a rookie, as his first game, and Dan Arnold's a tight end, and I don't expect too much from him. What do you see in this game, Merce?
Yeah, very much of what you were saying. My interesting thing is Adam Troutman had 6 of 20 targets. So we're looking at just around 30% target share, which when you look at the final stat line, it doesn't look as good. But when you percentage it out, Jameis Winston's going to be throwing more than 20 times a game. Like, we just know that's going to be the situation here. So I do expect Adam Troutman, from what I saw, even though Juwan Johnson's the one that got that touchdown, Troutman played 82% of the snaps. And then Winston did look his way often. So, like, I'm not discouraged from what I saw from Troutman. It was just kind of one of those fluke games where the ball wasn't thrown that much. The Saints didn't have to run a whole lot of offensive plays, so it kind of brought down the volume across the board. And I don't expect to see Deontay Johnson snag a 50-yard touchdown or whatever it was every week. So there's definitely going to be more plays and more moving the chains than last week. But yeah, I am playing Jameis Winston in this game. I have him as quarterback 14. Alvin Kamara, I have him up at running back 4. And then Marquez Callaway, he made my top 60 here. I have him at wide receiver 47, so he's a wide receiver 4, so it's a flex play. Just from, I guess, he has that upside of the burner speed on the outside. Yeah, and then for the Panthers, like you said, we still don't know about Sam Darnold because we don't know about the Jets defense, so we can't make a call there. Christian McCaffrey always will be in your lineup. DJ Moore had the target volume, played super well. Very encouraging what I've seen from him. I think Terrace Marshall kind of became Sam Darnold's new Jamison Crowder just from the nature of playing the slot, and Sam Darnold loves to pass to the slot. So that was interesting to see where Robbie didn't play as much in the slot as he did last year. So I think we might have been wrong on Robbie from the start of the season. I don't want to say he won't be kind of that top 35 wide receiver like he was last year, but I am kind of looking at Robbie and thinking, well, if Terrace Marshall plays this many snaps in the slot, DJ Moore is demanding the ball on the outside. Maybe Robbie gets left to dry. Like, who really knows what's going to happen there? Yes, they just paid him a lot of money, and you think they'd use him, but maybe they'll use him like the Jets used to use him, and Sam Darnold's accustomed to using him is as a burner on the outside, which will then open Marshall for the shorter passes, DJ Moore for the possessional passes, and then Christian McCaffrey for everything else. And yeah, I'm not playing Dan Arnold, so yeah, you about hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, when it comes to Robbie Anderson, I think the thing we have to remember, yeah, he had a great season last year, but for one, it's a new quarterback. But two, the biggest thing, it's Christian McCaffrey's back. So a lot has changed the way they're going to play the ball, right? He's, like you said, maybe just going to be the one to widen everything for the underneath, which is Terrace Marshall and Christian McCaffrey. And I mean, like we know, most tight ends, if they have a good running back like that, they usually don't do that well. I mean, the difference for the Saints is, well, Alvin Kamara is good at that. That's true, but they don't have much for wide receivers. You almost have to. You can only have like so many good players on a team, basically, unless you're the Chiefs and just everyone's good. Although we'll see about Christian Ceh. Looking at the next game, we have the Los Angeles Rams at the Indianapolis Colts. It's a 3.5 spread for the Rams. The over/under is 47.5, so that's implied point total of 26-22. Um, so yeah, I was interested to see the Rams, of course, easily handled the Bears 34-14 on Sunday night. So do remember that they did play a Sunday night game, an island game. Looking at this, Matt Stafford played wonderful. No concerns there. Definitely a QB1 again this week, even against the Colts, because I'm not even sure how great the Colts are, which I'll get to afterwards. Darrell Henderson, you're starting him unless you have another set of good players, but he's someone you want to start. Sony Michel, I'm honestly not worried about him taking too many touches. Cooper Kupp played a great game, and I definitely a wide receiver, high end wide receiver 2, if not a low end wide receiver 1 at the very least. I think he's going to have a great season. Robert Woods, I wouldn't be too worried about him yet. I think the only thing is Van Jefferson kind of stole the show for him that week. But I think Robert Woods is going to get his targets and his plays in time. I mean, they use him a lot of different ways. But he's so good at blocking, I can understand why he might see a few less targets than Cooper Kupp. Higbee, I have him as a low end tight end 1. I don't think he's a threat, but I think he can always catch the touchdown. I don't know, with all these wide receivers and Darrell Henderson and all these playmakers, who gets the ball? That's the only worry, is they could score a lot of points, but we don't know who those points are going to go to week. But either way, I won't worry too much. The Rams defense, I would like to play for sure. It's against Carson Wentz. And I think they're a good defense, of course. Anyways, looking on the Colts side, who do we have for injuries? Xavier Rhodes is out week 2. We have right tackle Braden Smith that's also out. Questionable. Don't forget, Campbell and Pittman are questionable, but probably by the time you go to set up your lineups, we'll know for sure if they're playing. But do keep that in mind. Eric Fisher, their left tackle, and their Quentin Nelson, their left guard, are both questionable as well. Kwity Paye is their defensive end is questionable. They have a lot of questionable players, so I'd be curious to see if this team can even come back after week 1. They did lose against the Seahawks, so I mean, there's not really a surprise there. Seahawks are a heck of a team. But when it comes to Carson Wentz, I'm not sure if I believe in him yet. I just don't see what I like about Carson Wentz. When it comes to Jonathan Taylor, I mean, start him because you almost have to. I mean, you drafted him high to start, so might as well. Naheem Hines, I don't trust him that much, but he might be if the wide receivers miss the game, Pittman and Campbell, then maybe he's a little more worth it because you can get a few more catches. Tight ends, I don't want to touch any of them because we have no idea who's going to get the targets. I don't even think they even got that many targets to begin with. Zach Pascal is probably the wide receiver I like the most out of the three of them, just because we don't know about Pittman and Campbell. But it's not like I like him at all. He's at best a wide receiver 4 in this game for me. The Colts defense, I probably don't want to play because even if they used to be a decent defense, they are playing against the Rams, and I think that's not a good place to play them. What do you see, Merce?
Yeah. On the Rams side of the ball, obviously you're playing Stafford if you drafted him. Darrell Henderson, I do expect Sony to have more than one carry as he did last week, but I don't expect him to kind of dig into the workload of Henderson. So I'm still playing Henderson. Yeah, Cooper Kupp, top 15 option. I expect Robert Woods to be more involved. The same thing with this Rams team is they had a couple long bomb touchdowns that kind of took away more of the target share and high volume targets because Stafford only threw the ball 26 times last week, which I expect him to throw more around 34 to 36 times per game. Again, it was just the nature of the game, so sometimes that happens. So I do expect Robert Woods to be a very safe top 24 wide receiver. Um, Van Jefferson, Tutu, those guys I'm not really playing, even though Van Jefferson had 80 yards and a touchdown last week. I'm not playing. Tyler Higbee, I actually love. And the reason I love Tyler Higbee is because he played 100% of the snaps, caught 5 of his 6 targets for 68 yards. So if he adds a touchdown to that last week, he would have been the tight end 3, I believe, on the week if he would have just ended up in the end zone. So that's talking PPR, but that would have been a great week, and everyone would be running to Tyler Higbee. Where now they're just like, oh well, he didn't score a touchdown, and usually that's what makes your tight ends look good on the end of the week rankings. So I'm still in on Tyler Higbee all the way. Paris Campbell is going to play. I just checked, and Pittman is going to go through warm up and make his decision. I'm kind of in warm up, so we don't know about that. If you're in PPR, I am playing Naheem Hines just because Carson Wentz did target Naheem Hines 8 times and target Jonathan Taylor 8 times, I believe. So if we're thinking about both those guys, yeah, Taylor 7 times. So if we're thinking 15 targets to those 2 running backs, that's PPR play. I mean, if you're going to play James White, you can play these guys too. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor, he's going to get the bulk of the carry, so you're playing him for sure. Carson Wentz, I thought had a pretty good game. I mean, 0 interceptions. Yeah, he lost a fumble. That's probably just getting back up to speed. I mean, he didn't play the last 5 weeks last year. Didn't really play a whole lot in the preseason, coming off the foot injury, so didn't have a lot of practice. I still do believe in Carson Wentz. Maybe that's the nature of trading for him in a dynasty league this summer, and a little bit of optimism there. But I mean, average 10 yards per completion. Yeah, 2 touchdowns, 38 pass attempts. So he's going to be throwing the ball. Maybe they're dink and dunks to the running backs and stuff. But I do like Carson Wentz. If Pittman is out, I'm smash playing Paris Campbell, mostly in DFSs or as a flex play. Zach Pascal, yeah, he's a maybe. I still don't know how I feel about the talent of Zach Pascal. I think he was more just one of those week 1 flyers that ended up getting 2 touchdowns in week 1, and maybe we'll only get 2 to 3 over the rest of the season, depending on injuries. So, yeah, that's how I feel in that game.
Yeah, no, those are all good points. We did have a question in the chat. Mars, would you rather play Elijah Mitchell or LaVisca? Oh,
Whoops, sorry, clicked the wrong button
no
there.
worries.
Um, that's a really good one. They're playing the Eagles, and I'm going Mitchell.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Going
I
Mitchell.
would go with Mitchell as
Yeah.
well. I think
Um,
he has the higher ceiling and, in my opinion, probably the higher floor. I mean, you never know with Kyle Shanahan, but I believe he's just the one I'd rather play. I think it's much safer than Visca playing against Denver.
Denver. Yeah.
It's a little more scary. So yeah, I'd
Yeah.
definitely go Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, if we're talking full point PPR, then it's a toss up. But anything like point 0.5 PPR or standard, I'm smashing Mitchell just from the nature of what the San Francisco run game can do.
Yeah, totally agree. Looking at the next game, we have the Buffalo Bills at Miami Dolphins. It's a 3.5 spread in the favor of the Bills. It's a 48.5 over under, so that's implied point total around 26 to 22. Um, I see Ben Miller just said Watkins' big game against KC. I mean, revenge game. I'd be very surprised. I don't have
Is Hollywood playing?
I don't know. I mean, isn't that game only later in the day?
It's the 9 o'clock game or like
Yeah,
the last game of the
it's a
day.
Sunday
Yeah,
night
but
game, so we don't know that yet. I
um,
believe.
he's questionable.
Yeah, he was
He's still
questionable. I knew.
questionable.
Yeah, but I wasn't sure if he was playing or not for sure. So yeah, looking at the Bills, they lost against the Steelers, 16-23 last week. Zach Moss was out week 1, but he is active for week 2. Gabriel Davis was questionable. We'll have to see on that update. It'll probably come shortly. Looking at the Dolphins side as well for injuries, they put Raekwon Davis on IR after week 1, so he's a DT. So that might help hurt their defensive side a little bit. Will Fuller, do a reminder, he is out week 2 as well for personal matters, but this is not like any problematics with the team. The team supports him. He just has a personal matter. So at least we know it's not a bad thing in that sort of sense. Looking at, of course, Josh Allen, you're starting. There's no question. Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. I don't really want to touch either one just because they're both playing, and we haven't seen them do anything amazing. I mean, Devin Singletary played pretty well last week, but with Josh Allen there on top of it, of course, running in those touchdowns every once in a while, I wouldn't want to trust either one. Maybe a desperate flex, but that would be about it. Stephon Diggs, you're playing him. Cole Beasley, I think he's seen quite a few targets last week, didn't he? He had quite a game.
Yeah, he had 13
That's
targets.
what I thought. Yeah, so I can see him doing pretty well. If Gabriel Davis is out, I don't hate Emmanuel Sanders because I think he can get a few more things, but I would only see him as a flex at best. Dawson Knox, you can hold on to him, but I wouldn't want to play him this week just to see what he can perform. But it's just because he's one of the only tight ends really there, and that's the only reason I want to keep seeing how he does. Bills defense, I wouldn't mind playing at all. It is against the Dolphins, who only scored 17 points last week against the Patriots. Looking at that, Tua, middling QB2 at best. I really don't have much faith in him this week just because he is against the Bills. It's another, of course, divisional game for them, so that's 2 in a row for them. They're not having a great start considering that, but they are 1-0, and hey, if they beat the Bills somehow, that would be quite a treat. You know, a 2-0 Dolphins against 0-2 Bills, that would be an interesting start for the AFC East. But I do have the Bills winning this game. I'd be very surprised if the Dolphins take it, but you never know. Looking at the running backs, Miles Gaskin, you can start him. I like him pretty good as a RB2, but it is going to be a tougher game for him, I think. Maybe even just as much as last week, because I guess they did play the Patriots. Will Fuller, of course, as already mentioned, he's out. Jalen Waddle played wonderful last week for his first game. I wouldn't mind playing him again as a wide receiver 3 flex option. Mike Gesicki, he had a terrible game, but I believe he might be able to pull off a bit better of a game this week, but he's still only a high-end tight end 2, low-end tight end 1 at best. What do you see, Merce?
Yeah, I see much of the same. I'll just kind of go off Mike Gesicki last week. He only played a 39% snap share, so that was not encouraging for somebody who was drafted as a top 12 tight end. And we saw a lot of Smythe last weekend, which was interesting. Durham Smythe, he played 70% of snaps. So yeah, he's more of a blocking tight end, but he also like he was on the field. So that's scary when you're thinking of playing Mike Gesicki. Josh Allen. Well, I guess I'm going to switch to the Bills now. Josh Allen last season only had 3 games with 1 or less touchdowns. That's what he had last week. So I don't expect that to continue on. You can trust Josh Allen. Like you said, I'm playing Devin Singletary as a running back 3. I have him at running back 31, which is kind of down there. And Zach Moss, I'm not playing until we start to see what his usage is. Stephon Diggs, you have to play him. Cole Beasley, PPR monster. Gabriel Davis can be a flex play just because he can give you those touchdowns. He's a touchdown machine. That's what he is. He kind of acts as the tight end in the red zone, just that bigger body, athletic pass catcher. I'm not playing either of the defenses in this game. Miles Gaskin, like you said, I have him at running back 27. Just what we saw the Bills do to Najee Harris last week. I wouldn't be, even though the Steelers' offensive line is way worse than Miami's offensive line. I still don't expect a great game out of Miles Gaskin. Again, this could be another opportunity for another buy low type of player in Miles Gaskin, just because if he doesn't produce this week, that makes back-to-back weeks of low production. And then after that, we're looking at he'll have Las Vegas in week 3, so that he could break out in that game. Yeah, Will Fuller unfortunately out. So you got to play Jalen Waddle, Devontae Parker. That's up to you. I still don't believe in the talent, but somebody does have to catch the ball. So yeah, I guess you can play Devontae Parker as kind of a wide receiver 4-5. I have him down as my wide receiver 60, which is not great, obviously. No, sorry, I lied. 54. I lied. So yeah, that's that. This is a game that like you play the big players, but then you don't really touch the other pieces.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really surprised you don't want to play the Bills defense. I think they're not a terrible start. I don't think like they're a top end start, but I think they can. I think they can slow down the Dolphins and get a few points on them. Because
That
yeah,
that's fair. I guess I just believe more so in Tua than anything. If
yeah,
I were to say anything, like I do believe in Tua. I think he's a pretty smart quarterback. Yeah, he had the turnover last week, but those are going to happen. He did throw more safe throws, but he did play New England, who I believe is a very, very good defense. And New England wasn't able to get a whole lot of points at home against Miami, so I think the Bills won't score as much as New England defense. So I'm personally avoiding them. Yeah, they have some playmakers who could make a big play, and that's all it takes for a defense. But yeah, I'm probably looking elsewhere.
yep. So Mars, we have a few questions in the chat. For one,
Absolutely.
they missed about what Carolina's wide receivers are against the Saints. My first opinion: DJ Moore is a play. Robbie Anderson, to me, honestly, he would have been a trade if anything. I'd be a little worried about him this week. And Terrace Marshall, I think he's just a hold. I mean, if you can really start him if you're really desperate, but even and the same thing with Robbie Anderson. If you're really desperate, but I don't even want to really start them as a flex. What's your opinions on those three?
For the Carolina Panthers, I'm playing DJ Moore with full confidence, and then Robbie or Terrace Marshall are deep flexes, like you said. Just till I guess like week 1, we want to make predictions and everything off of week 1, but we have to see the usage out of Robbie to really be able to trust him again. And then Terrace Marshall, if he has another 8 targets, then going forward, we have to play Terrace Marshall. Like that's just what it'll be about. Um, yeah, and then I see the second question's for you there, Derek. So 2 spots for Tim Patrick, Cole Beasley, Naheem Hines.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think if Pittman misses a game, I'd probably put Hines in there. And it depends. Like, if it's PPR, then I'd like Hines a little bit more. But other than that, really, I guess, and that's only if Pittman misses. But if Pittman's in there as well, I think I'd probably do Tim Patrick and Cole Beasley. To be honest, I think they have the best chances. I just don't think Naheem Hines is going to see a lot of running. Um, I think Jonathan Taylor will take most of those, and it's not even, in my opinion, a great matchup against the Rams. So, in my opinion, I'd take Tim Patrick and Cole Beasley. What about you, Merce? Might as well get your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% playing Cole Beasley. It's like, do you decide between Tim Patrick and Naheem Hines? I see them very similarly, but like the nature of it is Naheem Hines isn't going to be on the field when they're in the red zone. Like they're going to have Jonathan Taylor because he's a better runner and pretty much just as good as a pass catcher. So I see Tim Patrick having more chances of having a touchdown over Naheem Hines. So for that case, I'd probably play Tim Patrick just because they're likely both going to get 5 to 7 targets. Just Tim Patrick's are going to be further down the field, more touchdown opportunity. Where Naheem Hines, yeah, he'll have a couple rushes to add in on the yardage totals, but I don't expect him to have as good as chances of catching a touchdown.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So looking at the next game, we have the New England Patriots at the New York Jets. So another, of course, AFC East divisional game. So they're always a little scary because you never know what happens. There's a 5.5 spread for the Patriots. It's a 42.5 over under, so they don't expect many points this game. It's a 18 to 24 implied point total for the Patriots. Of course, the Patriots lost against the Dolphins because of that big fumble by Damian Harris. Came late in the game, and that really hurt them because I think they had a pretty good chance of winning that. Reminder that, of course, Kyle Van Noy is out for week 2, and also their place kicker Quinn Borden is also out week 2. So that's 2 players that they have out. John Smith is questionable. I'm not sure if you heard any update on that yet, Mars. And then looking at the wide receivers on the other side, Crowder is out for week 2 as well. And Denzel Mims is actually a healthy scratch, despite, of course, Crowder being out. So that's a interesting thing. That makes me believe probably that Keelan Cole is a go for this week. He was questionable, but considering that Mims is a healthy scratch, I believe Cole must be starting. So looking through their lineup, Mac Jones, I mean, you can have him as a middling QB2. I mean, he is against the Jets. That's the only reason I really like to play him. Other than that, Damian Harris, I mean, you're going to start him. He's a lowish middle RB2. The only thing that worries me, of course, is he did fumble, which hurts. But, of course, Ramondre Stevenson also fumbled at the very start of that game. So it's not like they haven't both fumbled. That makes me feel like James White is probably going to just keep seeing some workload. Do you have something to say?
Can I? Yeah, Ramondre Stevenson is a healthy scratch after fumbling last week.
Oh, I didn't see that. Wow, that's a big
Yeah.
surprise.
So that means to me, Damian Harris against New York Jets, just fire him up. Like I'm full confident in him. And then Jonnu
Yeah.
Smith is going to play.
Okay, I'm not
He's
surprised.
suiting up, and then we have to correct something I said earlier. Paris Campbell was cleared to play, and now he's not playing for abdomen, which wasn't what kept him out to start the week, which is quite interesting.
That's
Maybe
why
hurt
he was
himself in warm.
questionable. He was questionable
Oh,
because,
was
yeah.
he? Okay, so yeah, Paris Campbell, for some reason, they said cleared to play 8 minutes ago and not cleared to play 2 minutes ago. So he's out now.
Yeah, take him out of your
Um,
lineups, people.
so that makes Zach Pascal a lot more interesting. That also makes Naheem Hines more interesting, as we just talked about for the question in the chat from Ben Miller. So a couple things to think about there because he's kind of that slot, shorter yardage wide receiver.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that. And then talking about last game, Gabriel Davis is now playing for the Bills. So I just wanted to give a couple updates there, and you can continue with the Jet side of the ball there, Derek. Sorry for butting
Oh,
in.
no, perfect. I love the updates. We definitely need that, especially when it comes to my opinion, of course, on the Patriots. I mean, healthy scratch for Stevenson. Wow, that surprised me. That makes me James White a little higher, too, in my opinion, too. I mean, he's a flex option right now. I mean, I think that Mac Jones might treat him like Tom Brady did and throw to him quite often whenever he has a chance. But Jacoby Myers, I don't hate as a wide receiver 3 flex option. Nelson Aguilar, I think he's a wide receiver 4, low end flex option. Tight ends, I mean, they're both they're both questionable to me. They're not actually questionable for the game, but they're questionable how I want to place them because I just with Jonnu Smith being questionable with his hip, will he see maybe a few less snaps even if he does play? Because it's not like Hunter Henry's no slouch either. So that that makes it very interesting. Patriots D though, I do want to play. I think they're gonna just destroy the Jets, and that's why the over and under. I almost want to bid under just because 18-24, which is the implied point total. I can't even see the score getting much higher than that because I don't think that. I mean, the Patriots maybe score most of those points, but the Jets. I look at the Jets side of the ball, and Zach Wilson, he's a rookie quarterback, which Bill Belichick loves to beat up on. They have a good defense, the Patriots, and I don't trust any. If Jameson Crowder was there, it'd make me feel a little bit better about Zach Wilson. But other than that, with him out, this team just. Corey Davis is worth playing just because we never know what he's gonna do. He does have a good rapport with Zach Wilson, but everybody else on the team, I don't think I want to start. What do you see, Merce?
Yeah, definitely a lot of good points there. Zach Wilson, like you said, Bill Belichick all time is 21-6 against rookie quarterbacks. So I'm taking the New England Patriots to win this game, especially with the Jets not proven to be a great team just yet. Corey Davis is the only wide receiver I'm willing to play, and then again, I'm not even like super excited about playing him. And then Damian Harris to me, smash play. Nelson Aguilar, smash play. Tight end, you can take your shot. I would take my shot on Jonnu, but I'd rather look somewhere else. And then Mac Jones, like you said, kind of a middling quarterback. So that, and yeah, Patriots defense, I have them ranked number 1 on the week. So there you go.
Yeah, no, for sure. So now looking at the next lineup. Sorry about that. We have the Cincinnati Bengals against the Chicago Bears. It's a 2.5 spread for the Bengals there, or for the Bears. Sorry, which kind of surprises me because I think they're pretty equal teams. So we'll see what happens there. Um, so of course the over under is 45, which is implied point total of 21-24. Do remember that of course the Bengals went in overtime last week against the Vikings, so they played essentially 5 quarters. So it'll be interesting to see there what happens. Because I do think that means they're going to be a little more exhausted this week. Um, sorry, I had to pull up something. So we do know that safety Ricardo Allen is placed on IR after week 1 for the Bengals, so that's going to hurt them a little bit. Looking at the injuries on the Bears side, there's quite a few questionable players. Mooney and Goodwin, both wide receivers, are questionable. Jason Peters is also questionable, and there's no left tackle behind him, so that's kind of concerning. And Robert Quinn, the linebacker, he's also questionable. So we'll see what happens there. Eddie Goldman is doubtful for week 2, so we'll see what happens in that case. Let's see. Looking at Joe Burrows, he's a QB2 at best to me. I think he's going to throw a lot, but I'm not sure how good this Bears defense is. They did lose pretty bad against the Rams, but is that just because the Rams are good, or is it because the Bears suck? We'll have to wait and see. So that's why I guess Joe Burrows is a high end QB2, but he's not someone I'm looking to play too much. Looking at Joe Mixon. Oh, there we go. We have Marcel back. Sorry about that, Marcel. I had you blocked for a second. Looking at Joe Mixon, I would want to play him for sure. He had a lot of touches for week 1, so throw him back in there. Samaje Perine, do keep him in mind. Do have him on your bench stashed in case of a Joe Mixon injury. When it comes to wide receivers, it was fun to see Jamar Chase, who's had pretty bad camp, finally come back and show what he can do. So he's definitely probably one of my favorite wide receivers out of the 3 on the Bengals. I would definitely want to play him as a wide receiver 3, maybe 2. He's definitely worth starting unless you have great wide receivers. T. Higgins, I don't mind either. Tyler Boyd, a little concerning to see how many touches he got, or targets and touches he got. So he is to me a flex at best. If you're pretty desperate, maybe wide receiver 4. Looking at the other side of the ball, Andy Dalton, nothing great seeing from him just because he was playing against the Rams, and I don't expect the Bengals to be a super easy matchup for him either. I just have no interest in playing in him. Maybe in the super flex you might want to play him, but that's about it. Justin Fields is apparently going to get more snaps this week, so it's not like I'm really putting any bets on Andy Dalton doing anything amazing. When it comes to David Montgomery, anyhow, I do have a little more faith in him. He had a pretty good week 1, if I remember correctly, and I think he'll have a pretty good week 2. Marshall's over there showing off his nice David Montgomery jersey. Allen Robinson, you're going to start. Mooney, he is questionable, but we'll have to see if there's an update for that. But I could see him being a wide receiver three flex option because I do think there's going to be some points scored in this game. I actually think it's going to go over the 45 point total. Um, Bears defense, not really looking to start too much either. What do you see, Mars?
Pretty much of the same. Like Joe Burrow, I have him as quarterback 19, so nothing exciting just because of the nature of the Bears defense. But I also think this team showed to be better than we expected in week one, kind of with all the news and camps, like the drops out of Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow not looking like himself. Like I thought they responded really well to that kind of hate. Um, so I'm willing to play the Bears just because of the nature of the O line of the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bears do have a good D line, so they can probably get and rush Burrow a little bit more than we saw last week against Minnesota. Joe Mixon, you're playing. He tied McCaffrey in point 0.5 PPR last week in total points, which was interesting to see, and he had like 31 total touches, which is unbelievable workload. You're in on Samaje Perine. I'm a little more in on Chris Evans as the handcuff now after seeing what Chris Evans can do as a pass catcher, and then he's an athletic freak as a runner. He needs time to develop um, into an NFL scheme. I still think T Higgins is the fantasy and the team's true wide receiver 1A, and then Jamar Chase is the wide receiver 1B. Um, but Tyler Boyd, I think having Joe Mixon back this season, Tyler Boyd's going to lose kind of those shorter yardage touches, but I do think Tyler Boyd can still be kind of your wide receiver 4 or 5, throw in your flex and hope he gets you a high floor kind of week. CJ Uzoma, I'm not really playing just yet, but I am keeping my eye on him just because there was stuff that happened at the start of last season that had me excited about him. Drew Sample, I'm not touching as of now. On the Bears side of the ball, not touching either quarterback just yet. David Montgomery, I think he's going to be a smash this week. I think he has top 5 running back upside this week. Allen Robinson, you're always playing. Darnell Mooney, I'm playing as a wide receiver 4. And then Cole Kmet, I'm very interested in playing as a top 12 tight end this week. So yeah, that's about all I have there.
Yeah, and just as an update, Mooney and Goodwin are both active for this game, so that's good for Mooney. I
Nice.
mean, Goodwin we weren't really concerned, but it's
Yeah,
always of note, especially if both were to miss. Maybe then tight ends become a little more interesting. But other than that, yeah,
exactly.
for sure. Yeah, when it comes to Samaje Perine and Chris Evans, I don't hate Chris Evans. I do think he will work himself into being the handcuff. But I wouldn't be surprised with Samaje Perine's off preseason or off season, whatever you want to call it, hype. I do think he'll be the first one, and then he'll be his job to lose against Chris Evans if Joe Mixon were to go down. Now let's hope that never happens because Joe Mixon showed what he could do when he is healthy. It's always great to see when he's healthy. It's always worried that he won't stay that way. So Anthony Schwartz is also active. I'm not sure if I corrected that or not. So that's good to hear for the Browns. He was only questionable, so it's not like it was expected for him to be out. Um, yeah. Looking at the next, now we're into the Sunday afternoon slate. So keep that in mind, as all those games all happened in the Sunday noon game. So that's 9 games, of course. It's kind of crazy when we don't have any teams on bye, how many games happen all at once. So,
I love it.
what'd you say?
I love it.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at the Atlanta Falcons now against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Oh, this is gonna be a game. So it's a 12.5 spread for, of course, the Bucks, and it's a 52 over under. So implied point total of 20 to 32. And scary enough, I think I'm gonna take the Bucks over. It's hard because the Falcons look so bad, but uh, it's an NFC division, South divisional game, so you never know what's gonna happen. Maybe the Falcons will wake up, but they did so bad against the Eagles, 6 to 32. I mean, what are we supposed to expect? Is Matt Ryan maybe done? I mean, he didn't look that great. Mike Davis, I mean, yeah, he's gonna run, but he's not anything special either. Calvin Ridley didn't have a great game. He's the only one that you want to play. Kyle Pitts, I don't want to play him. I will hold on to him, of course. I think he's worth holding on to because I think he might, come into favor as the season goes. He is a rookie tight end at that. But everyone else on this team, I mean, Mike Davis, you can play, but I'm not going to feel great. I'm going to be holding my nose when I do. Looking at the Bucks side, of course, they just squeezed by against the Cowboys, 31-29, but that was a Thursday night game, so they've had extra rest. Um, they had a few injuries. Two players were placed on IR after week one. Safety Zach Trainer, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, and cornerback Sean Murphy Bunton are both on IR. Um, Other than that, this team is made to just fire on all cylinders. You have Tom Brady, and then of course you have Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans all ready to catch those balls. Gronk is of course being Gronk again. He looked pretty good on Thursday night last week. Ronald Jones. When it comes to the running backs, if you're playing one of them, hold your nose because you just don't know who's going to fumble and then not play the rest of the game. Basically, you're going to want to play the Bucks defense. I think they're going to be a pretty good defense against the Falcons. But we'll see. Maybe we're wrong about the Falcons. Maybe the Eagles are just that great. But it didn't look great. What's your thoughts, Mars?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Atlanta Falcons offense came out in the first drive and looked pretty good because they looked to Calvin Ridley early and often. And he had three targets in the first drive, five total targets on the first two drives, and then finished the last three quarters with three targets. Like you just can't do that. Like they got to figure out how to keep this offense turning. I don't think it was Calvin Ridley's fault. I love Arthur Smith. I thought Arthur Smith did a phenomenal job last season with the Tennessee Titans offense. And Arthur Smith has also been known as a coach that doesn't get the players to fit his playbook. He makes a playbook to fit his players. And I believe that's a very creative, great way of coaching. It's just, are we going to see that come to fruition? Like, we didn't see that last week. He forced a lot of things, I found. He tried to run a lot of like RPO, play action type things with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's not a mobile quarterback. Run the ball or don't run the ball. Like, I get some play action is okay and it can open things up. But then Matt Ryan was horrible in play action last week. So maybe that's not for Matt Ryan, and maybe you got to figure out a different way to use him. Kyle Pitts still thought he was in college and was only keeping one foot in on the sidelines. You got to get both down. But again, after this game, I think Kyle Pitts will be fine going rest of the season. Calvin Ridley, you got to play. Mike Davis, I don't really want to touch him. I'm trying to see where I have Mike Davis in my rank. 32. Running back 32 as a starting running back. Like that's not a good place to be in rankings. So you can play him, but don't expect greatness out of him. Like expect a small floor, and that's about it. Other side of the ball, Tom Brady, you're playing. No questions asked there. I have him as a quarterback 5 on the week. Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette. They did name Ronald Jones a starter. Said he had a phenomenal week of practice. Said he came out hungry. Wants to make up for the fumble last week. So we'll see how that goes. Again, these are two running backs I'm not confident in starting. I'd rather start like a high flyer wide receiver in my flex than either of these running backs. You're starting all three wide receivers, and you're starting Gronk if you have him on your team. And then yes, I'll play this defense as well. The Bucks defense should be a solid option in week 2.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, Kyle Pitts. I mean, we have to realize he's a rookie. Give him a few more games at the very least. Even if he does terrible this week, and even the next, I'll still just hold him on my bench. I won't be playing him. He's kind of like when you stash a quarterback, like say Trey Lance or Justin Fields. You're not, you didn't draft him to play him right away. You draft him because you think they're going to do great later. And that's kind of like what we see in Kyle Pitts is, yeah, we're not expecting him to do great these first couple games. If he would have, then holy cow, like you would have hit the jackpot right away. But these are more long-term things. And I can understand if you do drop him depending on how many injuries and stuff you have on your team or how shallow your benches are. If you're in a 10-team league or 8-team league, yeah, for sure you'd be dropping Kyle Pitts because you may not have enough bench space. But when it comes to a regular 12-team league, six bench spots, you're keeping them on your team just to see what they can become.
Yeah, and can I jump in
Yeah, for
there
sure.
quick? I just want to talk about Russell Gage. I know a lot of people were projecting Russell Gage to have 100 targets this year. He was going to be kind of that Cole Beasley type PPR machine. It is good to note that Russell Gage did play and run a lot of snaps or run a lot of routes. So I'm not discouraged what I seen out of Russell Gage. I just thought the nature of last week's game didn't play in his favor, and I don't expect this week's game to play in his favor. But going forward, he's somebody I'd like to keep an eye on just because he ran the second most routes on the team. Like, there's nothing to be discouraged about. He just didn't see the targets. And then Matt Ryan, obviously, he threw 35 times, but he only completed 21 of those passes. So if they can figure it out, these players are going to be viable options and they might become buy low options pretty soon. But yeah, I'm just waiting it out, letting this week happen and letting people get discouraged with all these options on this team. Because when you look at it, Atlanta's one of the teams with an early bye, and we've seen they're going to play Tampa Bay. They're going to have Washington in week 4. Like, and they already had a bad week 1, so that's potentially 3 bad weeks in the first 5 weeks, and then a bye. People are going to be very discouraged with these options, and I cannot wait to smash by these guys, and then have them through the rest of the season. Week 7 forward, they get Miami, Carolina. They're going to have Dallas in week 10. They're going to have Jacksonville week 12, Carolina week 14. Like, Detroit week 16. Like, they're going to have a lot of good games coming up. So I'm buying them kind of when that bye happens. And I think they can explode end of season. So that's just something to note.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing we've always seen with Matt Ryan is every 2 years he does crappy because he has a new coach. And of course, this will
Yeah.
be the first year of a new coach. So we'll see. Maybe towards the second half, he will, like you said, jump up into favor and do a little better with this team. So now looking
Yeah.
at the Minnesota Vikings against the or at the Arizona Cardinals, it's a 4.5 spread for the Cardinals. It's a 51 over under. I think the Cardinals will easily win this game. I think they could probably even cover the spread. I have a lot of faith in them. Maybe it's wrong of me. So yeah, the implied point total would be 23-28 for the Cardinals. Reminder: the Vikings, of course, lost in overtime against the Bengals, so they will be a little more tired and sore this week. It's not like that wasn't a tough game for them. And they also have quite a few players out, including cornerback Harrison Hand, OT Christian Darrensaw, defensive end Everson Griffin, which is a pretty big one, and linebacker Anthony Barr as well. So those are all players that are out for the Vikings. And that's another reason they got pretty banged up after week 1. So that makes me think that like they're just going to get rolled over by the Cardinals, who look great. They easily handled the Titans 38-13. The Cardinals, so I think they could easily do the same thing to the Vikings. I don't have much faith in this Vikings team, um, especially after seeing. I mean, they have great wide receivers. I mean, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen both look great. Especially, I think Adam Thielen is doing so good because of Irv Smith being gone, and that also made KJ Osborne look pretty good as well. So we'll have to see. But the only wide receiver, of course, I have really highly graded, of course, Justin Jefferson. But Adam Thielen and Osborne, I can both see wide receiver threes, flex options. Kirk Cousins, I would say a low end or middling maybe QB2. I really don't like to play him against his Cardinals because they handle the Titans. Now maybe we're just seeing the wrong things. Maybe the Titans are that bad. We'll have to see. Right, this is only one data point this so far this year, and is the Titans defense or offense good or bad? I mean, or is the Cardinals defense that good? Which I do think the Cardinals defense did get a lot better in this offseason. So we'll have to see what goes on there. They did have linebacker Devin Kennard, I think is how you pronounce it, out for week 2, and then also linebacker Dennis Gardick on IR after week 1. So those are two linebackers that they lost. So that's a little bit of concern, just because when you lose two of the same positions in 1 week, that's never a great thing. But of course, Kyler Murray, you're playing, no questions there. He was awesome, and it's great to see. Maybe he can just set that new bar of, instead of being, an average 30 points per game like we've seen in the past with Patrick Mahomes and stuff. Maybe he can make that new bar and make it 35 as the new average for a high end QB1. Chase Edmonds, I would play. James Conner, I don't mind playing because I think the Cardinals' offense is going to do great against the Vikings, and that gives him a chance to score a touchdown or two. But of course, he's more of a running back three flex option. It's not like I have amazing faith in Connor, but I do believe he's someone you want to play. Hopkins, no question, you're playing him. Christian Kirk looked pretty good. I definitely think he has an option of playing more of that slot option when they have AJ Green playing on the outside like that. I think they finally found a good place for him. So I have him as a wide receiver three flex option. I really think he can start to take that role. And the Cardinals D, I'm gonna play as well. I think they can show something. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just all a mirage, but I think I'd want the Cardinals D playing as well. What do you see, Merce?
I'm personally not going to play the Cardinals D, but I do think they're much better, as you mentioned. I do think they're much better than they were last year. Um, Starting the Cardinals side of the ball, Kyler Murray, I thought looked really good. He looked back to form as he started last year, which was a lot of fun to see. Shoulders obviously looking healthy again. Didn't rush as much as I expected, but was quite crisp with the ball. Yeah, he had an interception, but he also threw 4 touchdowns, so we can't be upset. DeAndre Hopkins is still DeAndre Hopkins. I have him honestly ranked wide receiver one on the week. So like you're playing DeAndre Hopkins under all circumstances. Chase Edmonds and James Conner were used exactly how I had them statted out to be used this season, which was really encouraging to see because they're both viable options. James Conner had 16 rush attempts. If James Conner's going to have 16 rush attempts every week, he's going to be a viable flex option. Hopefully, falls in the end zone. And we saw last week, not a lot of plays inside the 5, but they did have one snap that they were ready to use inside the 5. And who was on the field? It was James Conner. It wasn't Chase Edmonds. But then there was, I want to say, a false start, and then it pushed them back. And then we didn't get to see him have that goal line rush opportunity. But it was encouraging to see him on the field. So we know, it's projecting that he is going to be that goal line back. So if those opportunities do arise again, he's going to have chances of touchdowns there. Chase Edmonds, you're playing him off volume and yardage standpoint. He went for over 100 yards, 4 targets, 4 receptions. And then the fun thing about Chase Edmonds is he was also on the field at times with James Conner in 2 back sets. Sometimes they'd slide him into the slot. Christian Kirk, I had a star on him to start before the season started. I thought that depending on how Rondale Moore was going to be used, it was going to be interesting to see Christian Kirk's usage. The interesting thing for Dynasty players is Rondale Moore. I can't give credit to whoever posted this, but I read an article on rookie wide receivers targets per route run. That is one of the biggest predictors to rookie wide receivers and how they're going to pan out in a career. And if we look at Rondale Moore, he ran 13 routes, which is not a lot. It was 95th in the league. Like he's way outside there when you're thinking of routes run, but he was also targeted 5 times. He was targeted on 45% of his routes run, which when you look at the stat of dynasty wide receivers, that's a predictor that this guy is going to be a phenomenal dynasty option down the road. So I just want to note that and bring that up. AJ Green was used exactly like I expected him to be used and was as bad as I expected him to be. He will benefit just because of the spread option. He'll have 1v1. So he'll do good from the nature of this offense, but I don't expect him to be a phenomenal fantasy option. Max Williams played a billion snaps and saw maybe 1 target, so I'm not interested there. And then on the other side of the ball, yes, I'm in on Kirk Cousins. He's my quarterback 12 on the week. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, playing them both. Dalvin Cook, smash play. I think I have him as my running back 2 on the week. Let me check. Dalvin Cook's my running back 2 on the week, which is a lot of fun to think about. So yeah, a lot of really good fantasy options in this game. And then I do expect a high scoring game. And I do have Cardinals winning and I've been flip-flopping on the spread because I think Minnesota can stick around. I really think Minnesota can stick around, but I do expect Arizona to win this game. So, and looking at the over/under 51 points, like that's one of the 50. There's 4 games this week that are the over and under is 50 or more points. So, there's going to be fantasy points scored in this game. So, yeah, let's fire up these options.
Yeah, for sure. I think the Cardinals will definitely get their points. I'm curious to see the Vikings. I'm curious. I want to see how good these Cardinals defense is. We'll have to see.
Yep.
That's what makes it so hard for me as well for the spread. I think Cardinals are going to win. The spread is how good are the Cardinals D? Because the Vikings offense is not terrible. They have a lot of players, so we'll have to wait and see. It's not like Dalvin Cook is a slouch. That is for sure.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So now looking at the team they just played last week, the Tennessee Titans at the Seattle Seahawks. It's a 5.5 spread for, of course, the Seahawks. It's a 54 over under, so that's going to be a boat race by the sounds of it. Implied point total, of course, is 24-30 for the Seahawks. The Titans, of course, lost their first week against the Cardinals 13-38, so that's what makes me a little concerned about their offense. Ryan Tannehill did not look efficient like before. Now, is it because Arthur Smith is no longer there, or is it just Cardinals' defense is that good? We'll have to wait and see. We need more data points, of course, as the season goes along. Derrick Henry, I mean, you're starting anyways because it's Derrick Henry. You drafted him high, and you got to try to start him. A.J. Brown, you're playing him probably as a wide receiver too. I don't have a huge bump for him. Julio Jones does concern me. Doesn't look like he's doing great this year. We'll have to see. Maybe it's just a tough offense. Maybe it's or tough defense. Maybe it's just first game of the year, still trying to get into this offense. We'll have to see. Anthony Firkser, I think, was he out maybe this week? No, he's not. If you're pretty desperate at tight end, I guess you can throw him in there. But honestly, I'm not really looking to try to shove any of these extra players of the Titans into this game and into my lineup. Mekhi Sargent, I think he would be the running back to own behind Derrick Henry. But even then, I'm not sure how much I want him because we'll have to wait and see. Looking at the Seahawks side, of course, they beat the Colts 28-16. Not really surprised there. Rashad Penny is doubtful for this week, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him out because it was reported that he's going to be out for like 2 to 3 weeks because he re-aggravated his calf injury. I'm surprised they have him as doubtful and not just out. We'll have to wait and see there, but there's no surprise you're not going to look him to play him anyways because Chris Carson does his thing and controls the ball. I wouldn't mind Alex Collins as a backup running back to Chris Carson just because we have to wait and see, but also DJ Dallas is also there. But I think Alex Collins is the main back to own behind Chris Carson with Rashad Penny being out for probably multiple weeks. Russell Wilson, you're starting, no question. Tyler Lockett, again, you're starting. You might have some bad games here and there like last year, but I think for the most part, you're going to want to have him in your lineup. Same thing with DK Metcalf. They're both wide receiver, like high-end wide receiver 2s, if not like wide receiver 1s. Especially against his team. I mean, they're easy wide receiver 1s, I think, because this is going to be a boat race. It's the over-under is 54, and I believe that that's a pretty accurate over-under. Gerald Everett, I wouldn't mind in my lineup just because he's a tight end, and Russell Wilson likes to throw to them, and he could see a few more passes, and hey, even a touchdown maybe with this 54 over-under. What do you see in this game, Mars?
Yeah, I don't want to reiterate too much of what you said. I do think Tennessee went away from their identity, and that's running the ball with Derrick Henry, which then sets up the offense. I think they went away from that too early. So that's kind of where I was discouraged with the offense there. Usually we saw with Arthur Smith last year, it didn't matter how inefficient Derrick Henry was, they would continue to run the ball with him just to keep the defense honest to open up the pass game. They just kind of abolished that and just tried to pass without opening up the pass game. So then that's why they were bad. Julio Jones couldn't separate last weekend, which I thought was I think a note where we've heard a lot in the preseason, like, oh, Julio Jones looks like his old self. He looks 3 to 4 years younger. No, he couldn't separate last week, but that might have been the defense that really did a good job there. A.J. Brown, I still think he's a wide receiver 1, and I'm playing him as 1. I thought he did very well last week. Ryan Tannehill, I'm still playing just because he's hyper efficient. I'm not really touching any of the Josh Reynolds, Chester Rogers. I'm not playing any of the tight ends in this game. Derrick Henry, obviously, you have to play, and I think against the Seahawks, you can play and with success. Other side of the ball, Russell Wilson, smash play. Chris Carson, smash play. Tyler Lockett's I'm confident in Tyler Lockett. I'm not going with the inefficiency narrative that he had last week. I'm playing Tyler Lockett. I'm playing DK Metcalf, and I'm playing Gerald Everett as a low end tight end one, hoping he falls in the end zone. So yeah, and then the line, I'm taking Seahawks in this game to win, but I don't know about the spread. I might even take Tennessee to cover. I think this is going to be a tight game just because of the nature of how the Seahawks want to play. They want to slow it down and run the ball. That's just what Pete Carroll wants to do. And then Tennessee wants to slow it down and run the ball. They both don't have great defenses and hyper efficient offenses. So it's hard to expect what to see, but I expect the Seahawks win.
Yeah, I think the 5.5 is a pretty good line. I think I'm gonna maybe take the Seahawks just because I don't trust in this Titans team. But like you said, once they're up, they start to slow down. They don't like bury teams that often purposely. They don't just keep firing all cylinders, which like someone like the Bucks do, because the Bucks know, hey, let's just bury this team to the point they're never going to come back, right? So that's what does concern me with, of course, Pete Carroll. But other than that, I think I'm going to take the Seahawks in this to cover the spread, especially where they're at home. If it was Titans at home, I think it'd be a little different. So looking at the next game, we have the Dallas Cowboys at the Los Angeles Chargers. It's a 2.5 spread in favor of the Chargers. 55.5 over under, which to me is actually even bigger than I would have thought it would be. So I'd maybe even take the under there. But that's really only implied point total of 26-29 for the Chargers. So really, when you point it out like that, it doesn't sound as big as it did. Of course, the Cowboys lost in week 1 against the Bucks, 29-31. It was a Thursday night game. So that means they have a little more rest than the Chargers do. Chargers did beat Washington in a close game, 20-16. Dak Prescott, in my opinion, you're starting. There's no question. Ezekiel Elliott, I think you're starting him. I think it'd be crazy not to start Zeke, but do keep an eye out for him because I'd be curious to see how well he does against these Chargers. Murray Cooper, you're playing. CeeDee Lamb, you're playing. Gallup, don't forget, he's injured and is out 3 to 5 weeks. Cedric Wilson, flex at best. Tight ends, I don't want to touch right now because there's 2 of them that are getting equal snaps. Looking on the other side of the ball, we have the Chargers with Justin Herbert. Like to play him this week, of course, because over under. Austin Eckler, same thing. Larry Roundtree is a back to maybe own as a backup to Eckler. I think he did pretty well, and I think he is the clear backup to him. Keenan Allen, you're playing, no question. Mike Williams, hey, why not? I mean, he might fall in for a touchdown.
Mike Williams, no
Yeah,
question.
Jared Cook, him too. I mean, he could fall in for a touchdown as well, unless you have another great tight end options. And the Chargers D, I don't hate, but they do have a few injuries, so do keep that in mind. Like Chris Harris Jr. is out at a cornerback, so that is someone to keep in mind. That might make the point total go even higher. What do you see, Merce?
Yeah, you're playing all the relevant fantasy pieces. You're playing Dak Prescott. You're playing Ezekiel Elliott. You're playing Cooper, Lamb. Cedric Wilson to me is a best ball type of player, and I'd rather not touch these Dallas tight ends as of now. They kind of split the load last week. Unless one goes down, I'm not touching them. On the other side of the ball for the Chargers, we saw Justin Herbert have one of the highest time to throw, which means his O line is fixed. He had a bunch of time, which we also saw Austin Eckler have 0 targets because he didn't have to dump the ball off because he was protected and could bake a whole cake, make a sandwich, whatever you want to say, behind that O line. Larry Roundtree did show to be the RB2, the handcuff, however you want to say it. Keenan Allen, smash play. Mike Williams, I'm 100% playing. Josh Palmer, I'm not playing just yet, but I am keeping him stashed potentially in deeper leagues. Jared Cook, I'm playing as a top 12 tight end this week. And the Chargers defense, I love the Chargers defense, but I just don't like them in this week. We saw what Dallas was able to do against Tampa Bay stud defense, and I love this Dallas offense. So I don't want to play the Chargers defense, but I am keeping them around because they're a very good unit. And then the over and under, yeah, 55 and a half sounds like a huge number, and it is. But like you said, when you look at the implied point total, 29 to 26, the way I see it is Dallas is going to get theirs. Doesn't matter what defense is out there. This offense is good enough to do it. And then Dallas's defense is even more hurt than it was last week. And I think this Chargers offense is really good. So I'm not taking the under, but this is probably something I'm going to ignore in sports betting. I'm not going to look for the over or the under. If I was forced to take one, I'd take the over just because I think both teams can score 30 points in this game.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's one I wouldn't want to bet just because yeah, it's a high over under, and we don't know if they'll hit it. I mean, it's pretty easy for them to hit, and I think they might, but I wouldn't want to bet it. Looking at Sunday Night Football, we have the Kansas City Chiefs at the Baltimore Ravens. It's only a 3.5 for the Chiefs spread, and it's a 54.5 over under, so that's a 25-29 for the Chiefs. Now, this really surprised me because I think the Chiefs will win this easily, and I think by quite a bit, especially with the Ravens having so many injuries. They have a lot, and it just keeps happening. They have so many players on IRs if you look at their depth chart. Uh, just everyone is just going down with injuries on that Ravens side. So I really don't trust them to score a lot of points. So I wouldn't even be surprised if taking the under and taking the Chiefs at the same time, just because I don't know how the Ravens score that many points. I don't think the Chiefs defense are that bad. They held the Browns to 29 points, and I think the Browns is a pretty good offense. So I think it's going to be an interesting game just because we'll see how good this Chiefs defense is or how bad the Ravens offense is. Um, Looking at the players, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, you're starting. Clyde, you're starting. Tyreek Hill, you're starting. Travis Kelsey, you're starting. After that, you don't really care about anyone else. Maybe the Chiefs defense, if you believe like me that the Ravens are coming in banged up. Do not forget that, of course, they just had an overtime loss against the Raiders, so that what concerns me more on a Monday night. So they're on a short week, and they played 5 quarters, and they lost it, and they have nobody healthy. So that's what makes me concerned about the Ravens. I think they just have too many banged up players, not enough time rest, and had a big game. So Lamar, yes, you're probably still playing. He's a low end QB1 for me, not a high end like he typically would be. Tyson Williams, he would be the running back for me to start. Latavius Murray is not too bad either, but even then, I think Tyson Williams is more of a low end RB2 just because it is supposed to be the hot hand they said that they're going to go with. But and I think Tyson can do that, but I don't have crazy faith in him just because of what this game is going to maybe be. Sammy Watkins, I'm not like I'm in love with him this week. Same thing with Marquise Brown. I really don't see this offense doing much this week. Mark Andrews would be my main player to play after when it comes to pass catchers. I think he's a middling tight end one, and then that's about it. Other than that, Ravens defense I wouldn't want to play either. What do you see, Mars?
Yeah, you definitely make a lot of good points. I do think Kansas City wins, but to me personally, I see this game being a little closer just from the nature of both sides of the ball is Kansas City, we saw them struggle against the Browns' run offense, and I think Baltimore is just as good as a running team. Unfortunately, they don't have their top three running backs. They're all out for the season with injuries, but Lamar is also a mobile quarterback, and then I think with the greatness of this O line and the experience of Latavius Murray, the quickness and youth of Tyson Williams, I think this team can still run the ball effectively and control game clock to a degree that they can keep the game closer than some may expect. Yeah, you're playing Patrick Mahomes. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I don't have him as a super good option. I have him running back 21 just because I don't think he'll be super effective on the ground. Um, Tyreek Hill, you have to play. And then take your best guess on the wide receiver two on this team. Travis Kelsey, you're obviously playing. We just saw what Darren Waller was able to do against them. Chiefs defense, I mean, Lamar fumbled the ball 3 times, lost 2 of them last week. So he wasn't super pocket aware and was a little bit loose with the ball. If he can tighten that up, I still think this is a decent offense. Just because of what they can do, regardless of what weapons are out there. Marquise Brown, Hollywood, you can play him if you want to. Sammy Watkins, again, he's going to be that possessional wide receiver for this team, so he might put up enough targets, have maybe 7, 8 targets this game. And then Mark Andrews was bad last week, so hopefully he can turn that around. And I'm not touching this Ravens defense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, do keep in mind that Marcus Brown was questionable this week. So maybe have an option ready in case something were to happen. He does go out. Usually, when they're questionable, they tend to play. It's usually if they're doubtful when they go out. But do keep it in mind because you never know. Look at Campbell. He went from being in to out to in to out. It seemed like right in a row. So just do have make sure these players are in your flex options and not as your wide receivers only options because you gotta have this prepared. And then we jump into Monday night's game. All these players in Monday night's game try to have in your flex option if you can, because of the same reason as all of a sudden one of them doesn't play and it was unexpected. This is Detroit Lions against the Green Bay Packers. It's a 10.5 spread. In of course favor of the Packers. It's a 48 over under, so that makes an implied point total of 19 to 29 for the Packers. It is an NFC North divisional game, so divisional games tend to be a little different than you always expect because these teams know each other so well, and all of a sudden something happens you don't expect. I don't think the Green Bay Packers will cover this spread. I think it's much too high of a spread, but maybe I'm completely wrong about this. I thought the Detroit Lions, yes, I know they kept it close with the 49ers, but it was they were losing that game the whole entire time. But they were to manage to keep it close, so that's what I find interesting. Um, so Tyrell Williams is in concussion protocol, so that's one of their only wide receivers of note that is worth having. Is he's in concussion protocol, so probably not playing this week. I'm not sure if you know for sure, Mars. And then cornerback Jeff Okuda is ruptured his Achilles in week 1, so he's out for the season. So that doesn't help the Lions either. So quarterback Jared Goff, I mean, in Superflex maybe playing. Other than that, I'm not jumping to play him. DeAndre Swift, you're playing him. I mean, he showed out great last week, and I think if he can continue to keep coming back from his offseason injuries, he will only get more and more touches. Jamal Williams, you can maybe as a flex option, but it's not like I'm eager to play him either. Tyrell Williams, like I said, he's probably out this week. He might even be. I'm not entirely sure. Okay, he is.
Yeah, he's out.
Yeah, and then Quintus Cephas and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not really looking to start too much. Maybe as a deep flex, but that's only from desperate. Like if I had a Sunday night game player that became out. When it looks at TJ Hawkinson, you're starting, there's no question he's going to see a lot of targets, especially if Tyrell Williams is out as well. I mean, when you think about it, who else is Jared Goff really going to throw to? That's the only reason that maybe you want to play Quintus Cephas, but even then, that's a low-end flex option. Looking at the Packers side of the ball, well, Aaron Rodgers had a terrible week 1, but like my co-host did mention, is whenever he does I think a under 5-point total, you had said, is he typically blows up the next week's. And I think he just had an off game because the Saints, I think, prepared very well to play against the Packers. They had Robert Tonyan blocked in every way every time they used to play him last year with the plays he did. So Tonyan, I think, is going to have a much better game this week. Devontae Adams, you're starting. There's no question. When it comes to the rest of the 4 wide receivers and Lazard, MVS, Cobb, and Amari Rodgers, I'm not really looking to jump to play any of them. You can pick your favorite and maybe play him as a flex option, but I'm not too excited to play him. When it comes to Aaron Jones, I don't mind playing him because, of course, you drafted him for exactly what he's going to do, and I think he'll do all right against the Lions. But do keep in mind the Lions' D-line is pretty good. I just don't see them covering the spread of 11 points. I don't think Green Bay Packers, can beat this spread of 11 points. I think the Lions will cover. What do you see in this game?
Yeah, a lot of the same. The only thing that Aaron Rodgers stat is anytime he has scored less than 5 fantasy points in a game, every game following that he threw for 4 touchdowns. So you can hope that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a stud like he is and blow these Lions out. Losing Jeff Okuda is huge. That's a very unfortunate loss for the Lions because he was pretty much their only good cornerback. So to me, that means You have to play, obviously, you drafted and you're going to play Devontae Adams, but Devontae Adams is a smash. Aaron Rodgers smash. Aaron Jones, you saw what the Russian attack from the 49ers could do, so I expect Aaron Jones to be great again. Robert Tonyan, I'm not playing him, but I'm holding him. I think MVS is the wide receiver 2 on this team now. I'm willing to play the Packers defense just because what they can do from a passing defensive standpoint is they're really good against the pass, and I don't think this Lions team is as good as a rushing team as we want them to be. Last week, the running backs had success through the air. It wasn't really through or on the ground. I'm playing DeAndre Swift as a top. Let me see where I got Swift at. I got Swift as running back 16, and then I got Jamal Williams at running back 40, which I would have thought I had him higher. But again, I am willing to play Jamal Williams, especially now that Tyrell Williams is out. Jared Goff, I have him at quarterback 22. And then TJ Hawkinson, you're playing because he's going to get a billion targets. He's going to go 8 to 12 targets, and just from that, you have to have him on in your roster. Yeah, that's about it on that game.
Yeah, sounds good. I don't have much other note. I mean, it's a Monday game, so of course, remember flex players only if you can. Yeah,
Yeah.
so let's go into the sports betting category. Mars, you seem to have this under control. What do you got?
Yeah, so I want to talk about kind of my highest percentage bets. Looking at it, Cleveland Brown taking the money line obviously doesn't give you a huge multiplier, but then you can piggyback that to another game, to another ticket. So when I look at money line bets, I'm taking Cleveland Browns and money line, the Saints and money line, the Bears. No, I'm not taking the Bears. Sorry, that was supposed to be scratched out. I'm taking San Francisco over Philly in money line and the spread. I'm taking Denver in money line and the spread. New England, I'm taking money line and the spread. Tampa, I'm only taking money line as a piggyback to another ticket. And then Green Bay, I'm taking money line. And then when we're looking at player props, I go through Monkey Knife Fight for this. So here are my 7 most favorite 3.5 multiplier bets. So I'm taking Joey Burrow and Andy Dalton to throw for the over on their yards. So Joey Burrow, I expect him to throw for over 270 yards, and Dalton for 220. Then I'm taking there's a Lawrence and Teddy Bridgewater ticket. I'm taking the more on both. Their lines are 255 each. I'm taking the over on both. And then the New York Jets game, there is Mac Jones. I'm saying he throws 20 yards more than Zach Wilson. And then Corey Davis, I have him with getting more receiving yards than Jacoby Myers. Deebo Samuel and Devontae Smith in that game, I'm taking the more on both the receiving yards. And then Stafford and Josh Allen in that game, I'm again taking the more, even though that would mean they have to both throw for over 295 passing yards. I think they can both do it. Then there's like special things in Monkey Night Fight. So I think like the best touchdown players of the week are Alvin Kamara, Nick Chubb, and Christian McCaffrey. So I took those 3 players to score over 3.5 touchdowns, so 4 or more touchdowns. Tom Brady and Matt Ryan. I have Tom Brady throwing the over on 315 passing yards. I know that's a bit of a stretch. And then Matt Ryan throwing for less than 282 yards. Russell Wilson, I have for throwing under 285 yards, which might surprise some people. And then I have Ryan Tannehill for throwing, again, the under 260 passing yards. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I have him rushing more than 55 rushing yards. And then Tyson Williams, I also have on the over 48 rushing yards, which I think was probably the easiest bet of them all, was Tyson Williams rushing again for more than 48 rushing yards. I think that's a very easy smash hit there. I hope I'm not wrong. So that's in terms of the sports bet in there. That was requested from Ben Miller. If he has any other questions, please ask. And other than that, I think we've done a pretty good job out on here.
Yeah, cool. Well, I mean, game start in 20 minutes, so get your lineup set, get your picks made, because yeah, in 20 minutes we have kickoff of week 2. So that wraps
Let's
up
do it.
today's podcast. Please don't forget to click that like button and subscribe on YouTube. Also, follow us on Twitter at BoudreauxBrosFF, or our more active Twitter handles, personal accounts are at Marcel_BFF and at Derek_BFF. And please don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions about our rankings, start, sit, and trades. Thanks, and see you next time.